Hey guys, welcome back to the Base Brief. This week we're talking about fallout from the royal succession, a National Conservatism conference, and more Kim Kardashian drama. Let's go. All right, guys, I have to say I'm in the presence of a celebrity now. Brad is about to be very famous this week. Tell them your news.
Yeah, I don't know about all that noise, but I am actually going to LA pretty much after this podcast to tape tomorrow an episode of Dr. Phil. Yeah,
Love
that
him.
Dr. Phil, the daytime TV guy, former Oprah um, person. I don't know. I mean, it's still kind of surreal that I'm doing this, but he's been doing these episodes about like different social and political issues. Like he did one recently about abortion, where he has people from both sides, like both extremes. He really actually gets both sides of the argument, and then they unpack it over a whole hour. So it's exciting. I'm actually going to talk about Gen Z, which should be interesting.
That will be really interesting. I mean, you write about Gen Z a lot, and you also are Gen Z, so that'll be an interesting conversation. I love Dr. Phil, though. I'm actually reading a Dr. Phil book right now, and I feel like he kind of got pigeonholed, I guess, to some extent as like a talk show host, and but he's actually, I mean, he's a therapist, he's a psychologist. He actually has really great information, and I love that he's sort of doing this outreach and trying to form conversations across the aisle because we need more of that. So very cool. I can't wait. We don't know when the episode comes out yet, though, right? You'll
No,
film
so
this week.
it's not live, unfortunately, but it will come out sometime in the following weeks after we tape, but I'll be sure to let everybody know.
So how's it work? I've never booked a TV interview at that magnitude. Like, did they send you talking points, or how are you
No,
preparing?
no. So yeah, it was weird. It's like they reached out to me kind of out of nothing. And then I talked to two different producers on the phone, and they kind of like pre-interviewed me, like asking me questions to see what my
Mm-hmm.
answers would be about different topics and about Gen Z. And then they had me actually record a little video of myself, like
Hmm.
just I guess to see how I would present. And then they were like, all right, it's finalized. We're booking. And I've actually known about this for a couple weeks, but I didn't tell anybody because I didn't want to tell people and have it fall through.
Sure.
And then they're like, all right, we're connecting you to the travel team. They're going to book your flights and your hotel. It's happening. And I'm like, okay.
That's so cool. I can't wait to see it. I think that'll be a good interview. I did something kind of different this weekend. I went to Catholic Mass this weekend for the first time.
Oh,
Yeah, I know. I've been kind of thinking about being a Catholic for a while, which I know
oh
sounds
no.
weird.
That
I know. I know there's problems, but there's problems in all religions, like
Nothing against Catholics, but typically converts often come out very zealous.
I don't think that will ever be me just because of my background. Like coming from being a pastor's kid, I hate zealots, and I'm very much not like a fundamentalist. Actually, the reason I'm thinking about doing this is because I've just been very unhappy with the evangelical church most of my life. I've always had very strong disagreements with a lot of things that they believe and teach. And during the Trump era, when like white evangelical church went so hard for Trump, it was kind of the final straw for me. It was a huge turnoff. I thought that they ignored a lot of things that like I believe, like in the Bible, you're supposed to be kind to immigrants and welcoming to immigrants. Like there were so many things like that that just really turned me off. And what I noticed was when I was doing a lot of like criminal justice reform work and things in the community that I cared a lot about, it was always the Catholics and the Jews that were like working
Hmm.
alongside me. And they just tend to like live out their faith a bit more. I don't believe in the government doing a lot of things as far as social welfare, but I certainly think the church should be. And they just seem to be denominations or sectors of religious that were a bit more like involved in the community. And that's kind of what I'm hoping to do, is get more plugged in to that kind of effort on the ground. It was so funny. While I was at Mass, I went with our friends, Maggie and Sarah. And so we were sitting in the pew, and like at the end of the service, the woman that was sitting in front of me, she turned around and she was like, "Are you Hannah Cox?" And I was like, "What?" Yes. And she knew of me from the death penalty reform movement. So it was really
Oh,
funny. Yeah.
wow.
Yeah, it was kind of cool. So I checked that out. We had a pretty good weekend. And then I'm going to DC this week. This is so funny. I'm going up to DC for a gala with the Competitive Enterprise Institute. And guess what they themed it? They
What?
they made the theme 1970s because of like high inflation and price caps and gas prices. And so
Ah,
everybody's dressing in 1970s theme, which I think is pretty funny. So
that is funny.
I'm not going to have quite as cool of a week as you, but still a pretty good time. But you know who's not having a good time this week? The Brits. There's a lot of drama across the pond, if you will. The Queen has died, and I don't know. Are you into, like, would you consider yourself like, there's this type of person who's very interested in the British monarchy. I don't know how else to describe it. Like, are you a fan of the monarchy, the royal family? Do you keep up with them?
Absolutely
I don't really
not.
either.
No,
Yeah.
zero interest. But I found the succession process pretty fascinating. And some of the things we're going to talk about today do interest me. But just generally, the royals, no. I mean, I know a little bit about it, but I've never really understood the American interest in it. I understand somewhat the British people's conception of it and why they still support it or whatever. Never really understood why Americans are so obsessed with it. Some at least. I mean, kind of fought a whole war to not have to care what the royals think, but whatever. I guess if it's
Yeah.
just like celebrity entertainment,
I
it's kind of
think
harmless, but
most of them are high key annoying. Like, I cannot stand Harry and Meghan. You know that. Can't stand them. I think they're like, this thing happens when people are too wealthy or too successful and their kids come out and they're just losers, just absolute losers because they've never had to work for anything in their lives. And like, that's Harry and Meghan. Like, I can't stand them. I think Prince William, I was kind of cool with him when he was hot, but he has not kept up his look. And I think there's no excuse for it. You're a prince. You're a very wealthy man. Like, what's going on? Lock it up. Quit cheating on your wife. Like, get it together. So I'm not into him either. The one person I did kind of like was the Queen. I actually like, I'm not super into her like as a person, but I just think how she handled herself over the decades was exemplary of a leader, very like stoic and strong, and didn't really tend to like get into the drama. So I appreciated her for that. And I think that if you're going to have a person in leadership, I guess you'd want to see some of those traits replicated. But I basically said that online when she died. I said something like, there were some good things about how she governed herself that I think are exemplary, and people came for my throats over this. Like, they basically thought I was saying I like a monarchy, which is not what I was saying.
That's kind of the kind of thing where like 90% of people in real life would agree with you and just share that sentiment. Like, I don't know a ton about her, but generally she stayed out of politics. She didn't overexert any power and she really just tried to model British values in the citizenry and give back. And I don't know, I have lots of doubts and questions about the monarchy as an institution, but you don't necessarily have to endorse that as an institution to look at someone like Queen Elizabeth and see personal, values that you think are worthy of praise. I also think like it's just some people, especially on the internet, are just so incapable of complex thought. It's either like person good or person bad. And it's like, that's just not how real life works. In the real world, nobody's 100% good. Even somebody like Gandhi or Mother Teresa, right? Like, you can dig up dirt on them. They had problems. Like, there's basically no one who is 100% pure and good. And there's very few people who are 100% bad. And so you can find these shades of grays or different qualities to admire in people without endorsing them overall, everything they ever did or the institution they're a part of. But that's just Twitter for you. Like, honestly, I would just ignore those people because they're just not at all representative of what normal actual human beings think. I have to constantly remind myself that Twitter is just so detached from real life on so many things.
I think that's accurate. And I will say, like, some of the criticism I saw was over how she handled her family and their drama, like specifically over Prince Andrew, which, it seems very clear that Prince Andrew was participating in the Jeffrey Epstein scandal and like is probably a huge creep. And basically saying like she protected him. But like, I don't know that that's even true. From what I could tell, she like cut off his royal duties, and like, what are you supposed to do? I think there's that extent where I think people often blame, like, she was born into the monarchy. What's she supposed to do? Just like overturn the monarchy because she was born into it and she doesn't believe in like in power structures? I don't know. Like, there's some just like unrealistic things. And like, if your son is a creep, there's only so much you can do. Like, if, I don't know if she was protecting him or not, but like, that's kind of up to law enforcement. What are you supposed to do? Your parents not going to like come citizen arrest you and put you in jail.
I'm also like, look, I even think I really know very little about the whole Prince Andrew thing, so I'm not gonna say one thing one way or the other. But also like expecting someone to like turn on their child is a lot. I don't think most people, even if their child is accused of something horrible, would necessarily turn on them or cast them out completely. Like, especially a mom, like, yeah, I don't know if that's necessarily reasonable. But that brings us actually to the first thing I want to discuss in terms of the royal fallout from this succession, which is just another reminder that the United Kingdom really is kind of like a little bit of a woke dystopia, right? They're just a few steps ahead of us in all the kind of crazy madness. And to me, they always show us like what our society could become if we didn't have a First Amendment, if we didn't have free speech, because they just do some crazy, crazy stuff over there. So let me read you some reporting from Newsweek. A Prince Andrew heckler was charged with a crime. A man was arrested for heckling Prince Andrew as he walked behind the coffin of his mother, Queen Elizabeth II, in Scotland, and he has been charged. In a statement, the police of Scotland said the 22-year-old was charged with breach of the peace following the incident, which occurred as the Queen's cortege passed through Edinburgh's Royal Mile on Monday. The suspect is alleged to have yelled, "Andrew, you're a sick old man," at the prince in an apparent reference to the allegations surrounding the royal and his relationship with child sex offender Jeffrey Epstein. Now, look, I am not somebody who would advocate for going to a funeral procession and heckling. But that's free speech, man. Free speech includes the right to be rude, to call people out, to insult them in public. And they literally arrested this dude for it. That's messed up.
That's really crazy, especially because it's not like he's just disturbing the peace at a private citizen's funeral. Like, these are political entities. This is a government official. Like, I think that makes it even more egregious when you're going after free speech in that context, because that's, the government, of course, and politicians will always want to silence speech and dissent. And like, that is hugely problematic, but they are really bad on free speech over there. I don't know if most Americans understand just how much worse they are, because so often, like, we get told, all Western nations kind of have these values. Like, no, they don't, like, at all. They actually frequently have a lot of issues like this around the press and around free speech. And it's very concerning because we are so close to them. It really could move that way. Yeah.
But if you don't have a First Amendment, you just erode these things over time, right? Because, for example, the royal family is very popular in the UK. So if you polled people, you might get a majority that say that speech should be a crime.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that's the thing. That's why you need free speech and other things protected by your Bill of Rights. So not everything is just eroded by the will of the masses. I mean, on something like this, it gets worse too. Police Scotland arrested, this is also from Newsweek, one other woman on Sunday on suspicion of breaching the peace after allegedly holding a imperialism, abolish monarchy sign during an accession proclamation for the king outside St. Giles Cathedral in Edinburgh. Now, listen, they are literally speaking out about the system of government in public places against public officials. This is free speech 101, whether you agree with them or not. And yet these people are getting rounded up by the cops in a supposedly free Western nation. This is just wild to me.
That is not it. But I think you would be surprised to find that a lot of Brits are okay with this kind of thing because they've been conditioned to it, first and foremost. And then secondarily, because the free speech is so bad over there, they don't get a lot of information. Like, one thing that I think is fascinating. Read any gossip blog, read any, of the tea online, and everybody agrees Prince William has lots of affairs on Kate, right? It's like this open kind of secret that people always talk about. The British tabloids never mention it. It's scrubbed. They won't reference it. They won't talk about it because basically the royal family will come after them and sue them and like all kinds of things. And so that's just one example of many. If they're covering up that kind of thing, imagine the other stuff they're covering up and not allowing the press to tell the people. And so their citizens are really uninformed, obviously, about many of the things the monarchy is doing. And other politicians likely as well. And so that's always been the real danger with free speech. It's not just that you lose your liberty and can be arrested for things. It's that you cannot actually have a representative government or a democracy or a free system when the people can't get the information they need to adequately participate in it and to hold elected leaders accountable. And that's what really goes away when you don't have a First Amendment.
Yeah, it's just crazy. I mean, like we've literally had Supreme Court cases here in the US where we litigate this issue and they say that you have the right to protest outside the funerals of dead soldiers and yell terrible things about them. And, like all of these examples, you might find them horrifying or whatever. Somebody else out there finds your free speech horrifying. And if you want to have it, you got to have it for all. I just don't. And then they end up in this society where censorship is just normalized in an otherwise free-ish and Western advanced country with very similar people and values to us. Yet this idea of arresting people for saying the wrong things is just normal there. I don't get it. I don't know what they're doing. I don't know how they could possibly justify this. I mean, it's one thing to have a monarchy and to say, it's just ceremonial. It's not really a political, thing. It's kind of just a national heritage and culture thing. Okay. But then also we arrest you if you criticize them in public. Okay, so it is, though. This clearly is some kind of authoritarian thing, at least in the enforcement of these laws to crack down on dissent from the monarchy. And I think that's messed up. People should be free to speak out against it as much as they want. And if you disagree, debate them, but don't charge them with breaching the peace because they shouted out their opinion in a public setting. And also none of the things they're saying are even that crazy or seriously.
Right. Like compare that to like the Westboro Baptist people and what they do at funerals, right? Like not even close. But I think that is an important reminder. Like when you have freedoms, some people will use them in ways that you find disgusting and that you abhor and that you should debate and speak out against and push back on, right? Like I can't stand the Westboro Baptists. They're Looney Tunes. And I think that they should be shouted down in an open discourse kind of setting. But I also think you have to defend freedom to these extents, right? You have to fight on these grounds over here. You can't really have a tepid approach to civil liberties. It has to be an all or nothing kind of way of looking at things, which is why I think the ACLU got it right for so many years. You don't typically have to litigate on behalf of favorable people that society likes to protect their liberties, right? It's usually the really gross people, the people who have detestable views, the people who we hate, but we have to defend on these grounds because if you do not start here, that's the door that opens it up to come after people down the road that you do like and who are doing things that are peaceful and then that's who most of society is, right? So you have to fight it over here. I think that's a tough pill for some people to swallow. I don't have a hard time accepting that, but I think a lot of people really struggle with that mentality. Same thing we see in like criminal cases. You and I care so much about due process. We care so much about ensuring that people who've done really bad things in society still get their constitutional rights and still get a fair trial and still get a jury. Like these, you have to uphold those things for the worst people in society to ensure all of society is protected.
Yeah. Well, you know what all of society doesn't have to uphold in the United Kingdom? The same tax laws, and including the estate tax and the inheritance tax. So I found this very interesting, this story about the succession. So not only is King Charles now inheriting the throne from his mother, the late Queen Elizabeth, he's also inheriting millions of dollars in private wealth that she's acquired through different investments and things over 75 years as a national figure. That's not really that surprising. And yet, he doesn't have to pay the normal inheritance tax that everyone else does. We've got some reporting here from the British newspaper, The Independent. On top of official crown property, Queen Elizabeth amassed tens of millions of pounds in her own cash and assets, much of it from art and racehorses. Normally in the United Kingdom, most people pay 40% inheritance tax on anything they inherit over a £325,000 threshold, meaning the monarchy would be on the hook for millions and the treasury would be in for a windfall. Yet King Charles is not liable for a penny due to a deal negotiated between the Crown and John Major's government in 1993, effectively exempting the monarch in situations like this. So what's your reaction to this? Because I don't care too much because I'm an American, but if I was a British citizen, I'd be outraged by that. Tea was thrown into harbors for less.
Yeah. I mean, I think the inheritance tax is immoral. I don't think it should ever be applied to anybody. And as a whole, I'm usually down with people getting out of paying taxes. But that being said, when it's just the wealthy, it's just the king, it's just the politicians that get out of it and not the everyday rank and file people. Yeah, throw that tea in the harbor. Like, absolutely not, sir. I think that's so gross and it's such a rigged system and it's just such a reminder. Like, I think sometimes people give the royal family a bit of a pass because they don't really have a lot of actual power. They're sort of figureheads, and it's like, but they do get a ton of money from the British people. They do get a lot of privilege, a lot of corporate welfare, and like I would be irate about that. I'm irate about our politicians getting corporate welfare and handouts through our system. I can't stand to see people enrich themselves on the hard work of other people. And like, that's ultimately what taxes always come down to. So I'm always amazed when I hear people be like, I don't mind paying taxes, or like, taxes are the price you pay to have a civilized society. It's like, no, taxes are the price you pay to make politicians wealthy. And then they turn around and make your life worse. And it's just a very rigged scheme. And it would make me very angry. But
yeah,
I guess
I
they're
mean,
not my
I
problem.
agree. Like, my objection here is not make them pay the inheritance tax. It's abolish the inheritance tax. I think the
Yes.
inheritance tax is frankly fucked up as a concept. I mean, it's death should not be a taxable occasion.
When you've
And all
already
that
paid
money.
taxes on it. Like, that's what's
Yes.
crazy. It's like all that money. It's like when people say churches should be taxed. It's like every dime that a church gets has already been taxed. Every dime that goes into inheritance tax has already been taxed. So it's like double
Yep.
taxation. And it actually just, I mean, it disincentivizes people being smart and planning ahead and leaving things for their kids. It punishes you for living frugally or for working hard and saving up money to like pass on to your kids. It's so, like I said, I think it's immoral. I mean, I think most taxes are immoral, but like this one in particular feels especially egregious and just slimy. It's like so opportunistic.
I'm not a fan of taxes in general, but some are worse than others. And the idea of double taxation is so unfair. Like you said, you paid taxes on every dollar when you earned it. And even more so, you'll also have to pay taxes, depending on how you spend it, when you spend it. On sales tax or consumption tax or a VAT and value-added tax in many parts of Europe. So it's like they are just haranguing us in so many different ways to squeeze every penny. And I want to be clear that, like, in the US, it only applies to estates over, I believe, 12 million as of 2022. In the UK, it's only 325,000 pounds. That's nowhere near as much. So a lot more British citizens might be caught up than that than in our estate tax here. So it's not something that affects most people. But it's just wrong. It's just unfair as a concept. And once we concede these basic principles of tax fairness, they might originally only be abused to like punish the super wealthy or something. But it's not going to stop there. I mean, nobody in government loves anything more than coming up with new ways to spend our money. And that requires new ways to take our money. So I'm all against the inheritance tax, the death tax all the time. And I find it just absurd that anyone would think death should be an occasion to tax somebody. Oh, you're mourning? Oh, that's sweet. Here's your bill. Like, oh.
Yeah. Also, I mean, I struggle to put this in words, I guess, but like you forget how expensive death can be for poor people. Like this is not something I've had to encounter. My family has insurance and has planned, and like that's kind of the sort of family I come from. But I have a good friend who comes from a family that does not have those kinds of things in place and recently had to bury a loved one, and she had to come out of pocket thousands of dollars just to cover like the funeral costs and burial and all that. It's crazy. It's a very slimy industry as a whole. The whole like funeral industry, they really take advantage of people, but especially poor people. And so a lot of people, like, you know, they need that kind of inheritance and money to like cover those sorts of basic expenses. And that's something I think gets lost in translation. Like we always just picture inheritance tax being for really wealthy people. And that's not the case. It can impact lots of people in
Well,
very
in the
different
US, it
kinds of
really is
circumstances.
only for the wealthy. It kicks in at $12 million, the size of the estate.
Wait, I thought it differed state to state.
No, no, I'm pretty sure. I
Oh,
looked that up for the article I wrote. So I think it kicks in at 12 million for an estate.
okay.
Federal, because estate tax is a federal. There might be different state level ones. I don't know, but there's a federal estate tax, and that's the big one. And I remember this because the Trump tax cut actually increased the cap. So before it was
Uh-huh.
like 4 or 6 million or something, and oftentimes like just large family farms or something would be caught up in that, like a
Yeah.
family business. But with the 12 million, I'm sure there are some cases where like a business or something with a lot of value is passed down and it's burdensome, but it's mostly not affecting everyday people. It's still wrong though, I
Interesting.
think.
I had that very wrong then because I thought, and maybe it is this way, I thought there were like some states that had been getting rid of their inheritance tax. Like it was sort of a campaign
They might
across the
have one
states.
as well, but I'm in addition, but I know the
Yeah.
federal estate tax is 12 million, and that's the one that's most controversial, I guess, because it's pretty significant. States might have
Right.
their own. I honestly don't know.
All right, guys, if you're a tax attorney listening, let us know in the comments how it's going down. All right. So I want to move on to our next topic. There was an event this week that you and I, being the extremely online Twitter people we are, were watching from afar. And it was a first of its kind, I believe, new conference called the No, they've had it before.
Yeah,
How
it's
old is
the
it?
third annual.
The third annual National Conservatism Conference. And it featured a full cast of characters that we tend to not love. Our nemesis, Josh Hawley, was apparently there. And I think Marco Rubio was speaking. And then it had some more like mainstream people like Ron DeSantis was there. The Heritage Foundation was there, which used to be a pretty
Free market
stalwart.
think tank.
Yeah, pretty known think tank that used to be pretty based. They were there, and there was a lot of interesting commentary going down that I think we should read to our followers. Then you and I can dissect some of the messages that were being sent
Just
out
a
at this
little
conference.
primer, guys. National conservatism is a movement that emerged in recent years as kind of like an alternative to like Reagan style conservatism that was at least in name and in principle, not always in enforcement or practice, was dedicated to capitalism and free trade and free markets and military kind of strength and adventurism, and then some social conservatism, but not super hardcore on many things. And that's kind of what they are saying. We're not that. In fact, they're essentially saying we are big government European style conservatives who want to use the state to advance our idea of a common good that is socially conservative, promotes religion, promotes traditional families, and protects the one income household through almost like progressive economic policies like tariffs and minimum wages and regulations. And so there's a big spectrum of people that fall under this. But in many ways, it's kind of a economically and big government populist social conservative fusion. And then on foreign policy, they're kind of all over the place a little bit, but the general gist is actually more restrained foreign policy. So maybe where there's some overlap there with us, because they're generally not in favor of kind of the war-hungry, adventurous military policy. But so what we're going to do is there's not much video available from this conference, and somebody asked them and they tweeted and they're like, buy a ticket next time. And I'm like, that's kind of smart. But so we're going to read quotes that have been live tweeted out and then react to them. So this first one says, we need to rethink our attitude towards the military and foreign policy. We've sent millions of patriotic young men to die in foreign wars so that the pride flag can fly at American embassies abroad.
But I don't think that's why we've sent people to die.
No, I'm like, the reason I picked this one is this is from one of the speakers. And I'm like, this is just so everything that I think is wrong with national conservative movement. It's like they are making a principled point that, maybe there's some merit to, and nope, descended into culture war trolling. Like, please, we did not invade Iraq and Afghanistan to push LGBT values and hang a pride flag. We invaded them because of lies about weapons of mass destruction, because of like fossil fuel interest, like so many things, the reaction to 9/11. But that, like, do we put pride flags at embassies? Yeah, I guess. But like, that is not the root of our nation's military adventurism.
Also,
not even close.
That's what they're upset about, right? They're not so mad about all the people who've actually died. They're not mad about the wasted money and resources and like all the corruption behind our military industrial complex. They're just mad that the pride flag's flying. Like, that's your hang up. That's your focal point. Like, okay, get your priorities together, guys. Like, come on.
All right.
But that's the thing. That's what they care about most is the culture war. That really is, yeah.
And I don't even always disagree. Sometimes I'm somewhat sympathetic to the culture war complaints, but then they take it really far to the extreme, and it's such an emphasis. But Hannah, what do we got next?
So this one was by Senator Rick Scott, and he said, criminals are not being prosecuted, but police are being executed. Is this the end of America? It could be, but only if we allow it to happen. Sir, what? Like, do you know how rare it is for a cop to be killed in the line of duty? Like, it is excessively rare. And they actually,
that's a good thing.
Very much so, yeah. But like they often will be like, the death rates for cops really spiked in the past 2 years. Yeah, because of COVID. they had a lot of COVID deaths. They weren't like, they had pretty high death rates for COVID. And so make of that what you will. But like the number one way they usually die is suicide. Like they are not being murdered out in the field. That's not what's happening here at all. And when he says criminals aren't being prosecuted, like, what are you talking about? We have, 2 million people in jail. We're prosecuting people every day.
I think
what
they're
are you talking
referencing a few of these big liberal cities where the prosecutors have really stopped bringing charges on different kinds of things that they want. And I sort of get some of the credit, but it's like kind of like, what universe are you living in where criminals are no longer being prosecuted? That's true in maybe a few places and on some issues, and it could be bad. We could talk about it, but then police are just being executed. There have been a few high profile, like during the Obama years, I remember killings of police, and it's terrible. But this just seemed very demagogic rhetoric. Like this reminded me of the way Democrats talk about school shootings. They're total statistical anomalies, but they want to scare you and make you think this is happening all the time to push their narrative. To me, this kind of like level of kind of fear mongering about crime and police is kind of in the same vein.
Just very inaccurate, but okay. And also I will say it's a good thing that some prosecutors are not always pursuing charges. Prosecutors have always had very wide latitude to determine which charges they move forward with and which ones they don't. And a lot of them have made really bad decisions and locked up a lot of people for nonviolent, victimless crimes. And so, it's not always the case, but some of these prosecutors are doing things like not prosecuting people for weed anymore. That's an excellent check on bad laws.
I think it depends what crime they're not prosecuting.
Yeah, right? Exactly. All right, what's next?
So up next, we've got a quote from Blake Masters, who is an Arizona Republican Senate candidate, who says, on the right, we've got to get comfortable using state power to achieve conservative ends. Libertarianism doesn't work. Totalitarian leftism doesn't work either. And now this quote interested me because this is kind of the impetus or the general gist of the National Conservative movement, this idea that they need to use the government to advance their agenda and protect their idea of socially conservative values. What I don't understand about this, and what they never seem to explain, is how they're going to do that in a democratic, small d republic where to get control of the government, you need majority support, because most hardcore socially conservative views are no longer majority positions. Like many of the speakers at this conference are anti-gay marriage. That is an increasingly small minority position. Many of them are total absolutists, and I'm not saying one way or the other on this, pro-life, ban almost all abortions. That is not a majority position. I mean, most of the things, bring prayer back in schools is not a majority position. Many of the things that they want to do just aren't actually majority opinion, popular things, yet they say they're going to use the government to advance those values. And so I guess my main question is how, unless you're saying like they talk about Viktor Orban in Hungary. He is not a fan of democracy. He's happy to kind of rig the system or take power. And they're not saying that outright, but is that their plan? Because that would be kind of sus.
They kind of are though, because they are rejecting free market capitalism. And even in this quote, he says, libertarian doesn't work, totalitarian left doesn't work, but you want a totalitarian right. That's what you actually are after. You're in the minority, you're losing. And these people are, they're very afraid people, I think. They feel their way of life and their customs slipping. They feel like they're in the minority. And I think they're very scared of like no longer having the power that they've had over society for many, many decades in this country. And so it's very reactionary as a philosophy. And I think that they do want to use the government to force people back into a way of life that makes them feel safe and comfortable. And so that's why I really get irked with national conservatism. I just think they're basically progressives with stricter social policies. Like, who wants that, right? Like, they don't actually believe in capitalism, and they also like don't want you to be able to live your life free from government intervention. So I think it's a very creepy ideology, and I agree with you. I don't really see it being able to gain traction. I think it's a very small subset that will be attracted to this.
Well, I guess I think it might actually gain traction because I think most people are a little authoritarian. I honestly don't know. It would just need the right leader. It's just a huge jump ball in my mind. But so this one is from a quote from Rachel Bovard, who is a populist policy person, analyst. And she says, wokeism is not a fever that will pass, but a cancer that must be eradicated. And the free market won't do it. So I am not a fan of wokeness, right? Like far left identity politics, all the excessive snowflakery, just, all the nonsense that we talk about pretty regularly. But this disturbs me, this statement. It must be eradicated. What you're saying is that ideas and beliefs must be eradicated by the government. That's authoritarian, right? Like that is not free speech. That is not free expression. That is pretty chilling. And it's also not going to work out well for people who hold kind of fringe views on a lot of social issues to say that unpopular opinions, the government's going to just come in and shut them down. I mean, because she's saying the free market can't. Well, the free market of ideas can if you convince people. Well, you're failing to do that. We're failing to do that on some issues, but we're trying to do better. Her solution is, okay, well, let's just shut down the debate because we can't win it. And I'm just saying that I think is a betrayal of values, any semblance of values, limited government, free speech. And I also think it's a very short-term, self-sabotaging idea in the long run, because a lot of the values of the national conservative crowd are not popular. So you really want to start eradicating unpopular ideas, that's going to backfire on you real quick.
Yeah, it's not going to go the way that they think it will. And I think it, again, traces back to this. They know they're losing, right? They know they're losing in society. They cannot debate. They cannot convince people to live the life that they want them to live. And so therefore they want to use force. And I think that makes you a creep. Like, I think it's very weird to be so concerned with how other people live their life and to be so afraid. Like, I think wokeism's stupid. And I worked for a left-wing company for a little bit. I had to sit in plenty of kumbaya circles. Like, I can tell you firsthand how like ridiculous it can get. But that being said, it doesn't impact me actually. Like, if somebody else is like super woke and way over here and like wants to spend their time debating, racial philosophies and like communism, I'm not threatened by that, because I know that free market capitalism and individual liberty and limited government values can actually debate those things and actually win out for the marketplace of ideas. And I have enough, faith in my actual, not only principles, but also my ability to have conversations and reach across the aisle and talk to people, that I'm not scared of wokeism. But these people are scared because I think they lack those abilities.
I wouldn't say I'm scared of it, but I do think the woke left is trying to force it onto other people. They're not just they're not playing fair in the free exchange of ideas, right? I mean, they're trying to get people fired who disagree with them and deplatform people and silence people. And so I think that the cause for concern is not illegitimate. The alarm is not illegitimate, or perhaps it's a bit hyperbolic. But it's kind of this become what you hate thing. Like, when I see people ripping up the rules and playing dirty, my response is not, well, I should also compromise my principles. I should lower myself to their level to fight back, because I think you're just going to degrade yourself and degrade society and our norms further. And I think that you have to have faith in your ability to actually stay true to what you believe in and win. And actually, a lot of wokeism isn't very popular, right? You ask Black people, and they overwhelmingly say there's too much political correctness in this country. Right? You ask Democrats, a majority will even agree with that. So it's like their debate is here to be won. But if you're just, too off-put that you decide to rip up the rule book and just go censor a bunch of people, well, you're not going to have power forever, and you're going to learn to regret that decision. So,
and what's there to attract those people who are in the middle, who are gettable, right? Like, you're just behaving just like the people that you want to convince people are so bad. There's no alternative, right? You're both bad. So I'm not going to be attracted to join either cause. And I think that's where a lot of people are, where it's like, yeah, I hate some of what the left's doing. I think it's not very smart. And I think that it can be, as you pointed out, it can have an underbelly to it. But you don't defeat those kinds of actions or those kinds of ideas by just becoming more of that on the other side, right? That's a losing philosophy, and that's not going to really give you the ability to attract new people. So, all right, another person said, where did it go? Here it is. This is Joe Rigney. I don't know who that is. Do you know who that is?
No, but I get the impression he's like an ultra social conservative.
Okay. He said, if we want to resist the fantasy and folly that Rachel Levine is a woman, we must resist the fantasy and folly that two men can pretend to be married to one another.
So I can explain this one. Rachel Levine is a Biden official who is transgender and who identifies as a woman, was born as a biological male. And Rachel Levine is a controversial figure for many reasons. But the right is obsessed with Levine because it's a trans person in a health department role, and they're like, you don't even know your own gender, blah blah blah, whatever. Cabin that for a moment. There was actually, with this speaker and a few others, a pretty noticeable anti-gay marriage sentiment at this conference, which is not something you'd see much of these days, even at like a CPAC or a Republican convention, because a majority of Republicans actually now support gay marriage, and young Republicans overwhelmingly. But they essentially, this guy's argument, I looked at more of his remarks, was that you can't have the radical gender stuff that we're seeing now, right? The Zer, Zem, non-binary, trans, femme, whatever, use my pronouns, or it's literally violence, like there's no differences in sports, just kind of all this lunacy that we're seeing on the far left of this movement. He's like, well, actually, you can't even have gay marriage or gay people. If you accept that, you must accept that. I just flatly think that's wrong. I've always said that gay sexual orientation and gender identity really shouldn't even be grouped. They're pretty distinct concepts. And actually, most of the American public's position is generally pro-gay and then skeptical of the more extreme trans stuff, the transitioning minors, the sports competitions. And so I just thought this was wrong and out of touch. And yeah, I don't know. I really didn't like this speaker and how far he was leaning into the anti-gay culture. It's like, go back to Pat Buchanan or whatever. You're a couple decades late on this one, bub.
Yeah, again, why do you care? But I think it's funny they said two men can pretend to be married. Like, but they actually are married. Like, it's not pretending to be married. What are you talking about? Like,
well, he's saying that in God's eyes, it's not a real marriage.
All right. I mean, but it's an actual marriage. So like, move on. And I come from like these Christian backgrounds, but if that's what you truly believe, and I don't, but like, that's still just your faith. There are plenty of other people outside your faith, plenty of other people who think their God is just fine with gay marriage. And like, it's just this actual superiority complex I feel that they have, where it's like, because I believe this, because my religion believes this, it should be the dominant prevailing belief throughout society. And this is how we should actually apply all of government and public policy. And that is such an icky side of religion that I really detest. And I think that it's so like narrow-minded and so just uncultured and unaware of like the experiences of other people in the country, and just very not cosmopolitan at all.
Yeah, my belief has always been that like people should be able to have whatever beliefs about gay marriage they want. Like, I don't think that a church that's more traditional should be forced to perform or recognize gay marriages. Absolutely not. My only thing has always just been that like the law should treat everyone equally, and then people can decide for themselves what they think marriage is. And if you don't like marriage, a gay marriage, you don't believe in it or agree with it, no one's forcing you to get gay married. But more importantly, belong to a church that doesn't do it, that doesn't recognize it. That's fine. I mean, I might not morally love that, but that's well within your rights. The problem is that folks like this think that their belief should be superimposed on society through the law. And I think that's just wrong. I just don't support that.
Mm-hmm. All right. The last one we have is by Scott Yenor, not sure how you say his last name, but he said, pornography is a great tool to make sure you don't have high thoughts or high ambitions. A tyrant loves it. I thought this was interesting because these people hate porn at a level that like, I'm trying to track. Like, I think the porn industry has some problems clearly, but as a whole, like, I don't really spend a whole lot of time staying up late at night and worrying about other people watching porn. If you think porn's bad, don't watch it. These people hate porn. Like, they want to see porn banned. They think that it's like this huge, I'm like, do you guys all have a secret porn addiction or something? Like, how did you get high key up here on this issue?
I mean, I do think there's problems with it. Like, there's legitimate concerns about porn consumption, the type of porn, the way it glorifies a lot of violence or very negative things towards women and the messages it sends. And there's lots of legitimate concerns to be had, though I'm certainly not a ban person. But this is just so hyperbolic. Tyrants love porn. Porn keeps it like all across this country right now. There's just millions of people who do sometimes watch pornography, and they're not somehow enslaved and prevented from high ambitions or high thoughts. It's just like, what? Maybe you have a special problem with this stuff that really holds you back, and you should talk to someone about that. I'm not even judging, but just like, you're a little bit alarmist here, folks.
Yeah. It gives closeted issues vibes to me. Like, I just think I don't understand why you're so bent out of shape unless you actually have a problem with this. And if you do, you're right. There's people should get help. Porn addiction can be a real thing.
Yeah, that's
if it
valid.
becomes that, like, then absolutely seek help, just as you would seek help for any other addiction that you got. But that doesn't mean the vast majority of people are at that level with it, or that, you know, that this is something that's just a huge corrosion on society. I don't think it's
also just historically, I don't think most tyrants embraced porn, actually. I think there were a lot of bans on pornography from tyrants, actually.
Yeah. Definitely went the other way. Well, speaking of porn, there is some new Kim K Kardashian drama. And you know I keep up with her. And I'm actually typically a Kim K fan. I've gone to bat for her. I've stood up for her on a number of things. But there's a new story circulating. I'm going to read to you from E! Online, kind of the summary of what's happening. But if you'll recall, Kim K, she got her start from a leaked sex video between her and who was her boyfriend at the time, Ray J, who is Brandy's younger brother. He's a rapper and singer and artist. And there's always been some suspicion that perhaps the leak of this video was a bit more orchestrated than the family tried to indicate. So this week, basically Kris Jenner, who's Kim Kardashian's mom, she went on this late night show with James Corden, and she had to take a polygraph test. This was part of like their whole gimmick they were doing. And during the course of this, she was asked whether she helped Kim release her sex tape, as it's been rumored that she has done for some time. And she basically said no, that she didn't. And she passed the polygraph, and that was kind of that. But Kris basically instigated Ray J to start speaking out. He got mad about this. I think he feels that like he's always been sort of slightly blamed by the family, or they've kind of let it seem like he's the one that leaked it, because obviously if Kim and Kris didn't leak it, then who leaked this video? Who sold it? So he feels like he's been maligned in this. TMZ's president, Steve Hirsch, he came out, and that's who actually distributed the video back in the day. He came out and said that the company, the company that released the tape also previously maintained Kris never met, spoke, or worked with him on the release of the video. So he's like, no, she's telling the truth. It's good. So Ray J,
they're not so reliable, TMZ.
No.
I would not take their word as gospel.
Ray J snaps, and it was fun to watch. I'm not going to lie. This man goes on like a 44-minute Instagram live tirade, basically saying that Kris told them to make the sex tapes, that there were multiple sex tapes out there, not just one, that one was shot in Cabo, one was in Santa Barbara, and then Kris handpicked the one where Kim looked best. He claimed there was a third tape.
That's her mother.
Yes. I mean, but keep in mind, even on like the first season of Kardashians, Kim was posing for Playboy, and her mom was there like taking pictures to the side, being like, you're doing amazing, sweetie. So it's not uncharacteristic that this might be what went down. He also was sharing he was showing handwritten notes from Kim and then comparing it to like the contract, where he's like, no, we sold these videos. We both got paid. Like that was always the scam. So
receipts?
Yes. Yeah, he basically had receipts. He's going ham on this family at this point. He's like, absolutely not. I'm done with this, and just calling them to task. So they have not responded to Ray J. But this has been a big kind of gossip train over the weekend, and a lot of people are really interested. I'm interested in it because I think most likely he's telling the truth. Why would he lie? And I think that it's really crappy, because this is something I've encountered as a woman in multiple industries, where if we're going to talk about Me Too, and we should be having those conversations, we also have to talk about the women that sell other women out by gladly participating in some of this. That was true in the music industry. When I was in country music, the vast majority of women who got record deals were sleeping with people at the labels. And I remember it made me so mad, because then I would get hit on by these creeps at the label. And I'm like, I'm not going to sleep with you. Like, but it would put me in that kind of position. And I think that's true in Hollywood. I think that's true in politics to some extent. Like, you see this a good bit. And I think that there are a lot of women who are fine using their sex and using their bodies to get ahead in their careers. And I struggle with this, because on one hand, I'm like, I guess it's your prerogative. You do what you want, right? Like, I can't control how people live their lives, but it does impact other women. It's
enabling the system and the predatory behavior.
Yes. And then like the people who don't want to participate in that have a harder time getting ahead by simply doing the right thing and working hard. We end up getting sexually harassed by men who are like, it worked for them some of the time. And so it ends up really creating more victims. And I'm kind of mad at Kim over this, if this is what she really did. And it's, I think that's slimy. And I think that,
I guess we don't know, but if you put a gun to my head and made me guess, I think that she or her mom probably leaked the tape. And I don't even necessarily have a problem with you leaking your own sex tape, I guess. But I do have a problem with you doing it and then lying about it. And kind of, if they really did do it, and they've been maligning him for years as somebody who basically they're saying he did revenge porn, which is really messed up when people like after a breakup or something, they release pornographic content of someone else without their consent. Like that's criminal in some places, but it's morally very wrong in all places, in my opinion. And there, if that's not how it went down, for them to maintain that would be really messed up. And it would be harmful to like women who actually have been victimized by these things.
Right.
If it comes out that they faked that, which like I said, we don't know, but seems the most likely option here. I don't, also polygraphs are junk science. They're not like I know that they're not really reliable. So the fact that she passed a polygraph doesn't mean much. They stopped really using those in law enforcement because they're not very reliable.
Yeah, they're absolute bugs. And also like the show could have been orchestrating that behind the scenes too. Like, come on, it's TV. So I don't know. I just like this. I think revenge porn is a very, very serious problem. And I'm glad to see actually that it's been more criminalized in recent years and people are starting to more aggressively prosecute people for some of this because you can really ruin people's lives, especially women who are usually the targets of this kind of thing. And so to make it seem like this is what happened to you and you were a victim, that's a really seedy charade to be carrying on for well over a decade now. So disappointed, I like Kim K for her advocacy in criminal justice reform and some things and love her as a style icon, but this is not it. This is not feminism. This is not how women should be, leading and conducting themselves. And again, I think it hurts real victims and even leads to more victims being created by people participating in some of this. So,
and that's Hannah's hot take.
That is my hot take. Yeah. Not based. No. What's your real hot take though? Are we ready for hot takes?
Ooh, not ready. And let me think of one.
I have one I'll give while we're waiting. So I just booked a trip to Paris for the end of the month. I'm so excited. I've never been to France before. And I am working really hard to like just get all of the travel plans aligned. The French, I know they don't like Americans and I know that they like want you to speak French. I get it. It has been so hard booking accommodations in France because none of their websites translate. So like when I'm making reservations, I'm trying to make reservations in French and also they use military time, and so you've got a 6-hour time jump and it's on military time. It has been so confusing. I don't know how this is going to pan out. I might be eating dinner at like 3. I can't really tell, but
maybe
I would
take the hint. They don't want you there. They don't like Americans. Honestly, France. I think their culture sucks. I think their culture is very lazy. I think they're very judgy. I've been to many European countries and I've never had worse experiences than the 2 times I've been to France. They don't like Americans. Well, guess what? We don't like you either.
Maybe we don't like you either. I'm not that worried about it. Yeah. No, my parents went to France in the early 2000s and they still talk about how awful everybody was there to them. So I'm just anticipating that people will be rude and mean, but you know what? I'm going to eat like crazy. I've got a photographer booked to take pictures in front of the Eiffel Tower. I'm going to just be as American as I want and live it up. And I don't care. Is food
even good though? I never had anything to write home about when I was in Paris.
I don't know. I haven't been to Paris before.
What are you going to do? Have some frog's legs?
No, I will not eat frog's legs. I'm a very adventurous eater. I will eat almost anything once. I hate frogs. You know this. They creep me out. That's like eating a mouse to me. Like, why? No, like I don't want to touch a frog. No way. But I'll try snails. I'll probably do some escargot, things like that. I'll be adventurous. But yeah, no frogs legs. Those are out. You still don't have a hot take, do you?
Oh, my hot take is that the French culture sucks.
Oh, that's your hot take.
You should not get all of August off. Get to work, lazy bums.
True. I am hoping I encounter at least one good old French riot, though. I do love how fast the French riot. Like
they really do.
Like they'll take to the streets over anything. It's fantastic. I love that energy. All right, guys. Well, that's a wrap. See you next week. And until then, stay based.